Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. I think we have quite a few new people here, so I just wanted to do a quick introduction. Hi, my name is Tyler. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be doing the mid-year freakout tag and talking about the books that I've read so far in 2025. I did do this tag last year. I'm not sure if I want to link it down below because it might be embarrassing, but I do know for one thing, last year I yapped so much, so I'm going to try and be a little bit quicker this year. I'm going to be a little bit more selective with the books that I choose for my answers, but before we hop in, make sure to go down below, like, subscribe so that you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and let's talk about some books. Starting it off with a quick and easy question. Question one is, how many books have you read so far in 2025? And so far, I have read 45 books. While I am on par for what my reading goal is for the year, I did think I would have read a few more books so far. I'm going to blame the lack of books on my wedding and my honeymoon and just the overall stress I was under at the start of this year. I'm so excited going into the second half of this year. I feel like I have so many good books and series that I've been saving for the fall and winter time. So I only think that we have amazing books ahead. Question two is the best books that you've read so far. While I do have a lot of the books that I've read next to me, it's going to be an absolute mission to get these out of these stacks. So this really is just for aesthetic purposes only. I'm just going to go ahead and insert pictures of whatever books I'm discussing for my top 3 books so far. In the number 3 slot, I'm going to give it to Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto. This book took me completely by surprise. I had heard a lot of good things. However, this is a contemporary romance following 2 musicians and kind of rivaling musicians as well, with a very grumpy MMC. Honestly, like the grumpy sunshine dynamic really isn't my favorite. I haven't read a book involving 2 musicians specifically because I'm not like a huge music person. Obviously, I like listening to music, but it's not like I have some very intense music background. But I don't know what was in these words. I was completely and utterly obsessed with this couple. The love they have of music and how integral it is a part of their relationship, I was fully bought in. This was my first book by Julie Soto, and it definitely is not my last. I read her other contemporary romance later on in the year, and then I'm very excited to get to the romantasy that she also just published. If you haven't read this, I would definitely give it a go. The tension, the banter was top tier, and I was just completely bought into this relationship from start to finish. Second best book of the year is going to go to Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. This is book 6 in the Throne of Glass fantasy series. I really wasn't expecting this book to be such a hit because this is the book that you read with Tower of Dawn as a tandem read. But honestly, I think the tandem read only made me love this more because what happens in this book is so action-packed. It's so back-to-back. However, I feel like taking a step away from the plot, getting a break with Tower of Dawn, and then coming back to the story just only enhanced the experience. All the plot points that we see converge in this book are masterfully done. I feel like this is also really when I bought into our inner circle and these main characters that we see throughout the series. The ending to this book absolutely wrecked me, but I'll get to that later. This book just made a huge emotional impact on me, and there was not a single thing that I would change about it. And that would lead us to the best book of 2025. And if you know me at all, if you've watched any of my videos, you know that this is going to go to The X-Files by Jessica Joyce. Honestly, this book is becoming a running joke within my friend group about how often I talk about it and how often I tell people to read it. This is the most delicious childhood lovers second chance romance. Takes place in Napa Valley. There's a wedding aspect to the book. It was perfect. I loved every word. If you have watched any of our videos at all, you will know that I'm going to be begging you to please pick this up. Next is the best sequel you've read so far this year. This was an interesting question to me. I don't feel like I've read a lot of great sequels this year. Mainly, I think you see a lot of sequels in fantasy series, and I haven't been too into my fantasy era at the start of this year. So I'm hoping to read a lot more sequels and have a stronger answer for this at the end of the year. But so far in 2025, I would say that the best sequel I've read is Foxglove by Adeline Grace. This is book 2 in the Belladonna series, which is a YA new adult gothic romantasy. In book 1, we follow Signa, and she has a very interesting relationship with death. Kind of the gothic element of this series is that death is personified. And so not only has death been kind of haunting her throughout her whole childhood because she is an orphan and has just been passed around to so many different family members, but as she gets older, they start to develop another aspect to their relationship as well. Why I think it's such a good sequel is because book 3 actually ends up following another character, and I feel like Foxglove did such a good job of balancing Signa's story and integrating our next character storyline. It felt very seamless, everything tied together. I did end up giving that book a 4 stars, and I'm really looking forward to reading book 3 in that series, Wisteria, which should be getting dropped off on my doorstep in just a few weeks. I've been waiting for the paperback, but I am really excited to finish off that series. Next question is the biggest surprise I've had thus far. Again, I feel like if you've watched a few of the recent videos, you might not be too surprised by my answer because this is a book that I had been avoiding for a really long time. I didn't know if I was going to like this, didn't know what to expect, and that is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. As I've mentioned so many times, I've had a very 50-50 relationship with her. I had heard amazing things about Just for the Summer. However, I didn't know if that was going to be my experience. So I was really shocked whenever I did pick up this book because I ended up giving it a 4.5 stars, which is crazy for me because I am a very harsh rater and I went into this book with a lot of skepticism. But I do have to say, just as the story went on and especially how strong the ending was, my rating for it was just ever increasing. This is book 3 in a contemporary romance series. I would definitely recommend that you read books 1 and 2 first, and I'd say pick it up sooner rather than later because it is a great summer read, but just be warned, there is a lot of emotional depth to it and a big trigger warning for child neglect. Fifth question is asking about how many 5-star reads I've had this year. As I just mentioned, I'm a really harsh rater, so I've actually only had 5-star reads throughout this whole year. 3 of those I've already mentioned with being the top 3 books that I've read thus far: Not Another Love Song, Empire of Storms, and The X-Files. So really, let's just talk about my 2 other 5-star reads. First one is a really easy one. I did a reread of Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This was the first Emily Henry book that I read years ago at this point, and I originally gave it 4 stars, which was unbelievably rude of me. This was an easy 5 stars on the reread. I absolutely loved Charlie and Nora's dynamic, who are both very grumpy characters in the literary world. As Nora is escaping from New York for the summer with her sister, they go to a very small town in North Carolina, and Nora happens to run into Charlie, whom she had a very bad first impression in a work meeting a few years ago. However, they soon realize they're a lot more alike than they originally thought, and the best emotional connection with delicious banter starts to ensue. The only 5-star read outside of those would be Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. I was so happy because I actually found this book in a 24-hour readathon that I did at the very start of this year. And actually in that same 24-hour readathon, I found Not Another Love Song. So I had 2 5-star reads in a 24-hour readathon, which is unheard of for me. But Out on a Limb is such a popular contemporary romance. It was my first introduction to the accidental pregnancy trope, but I do have to say that I obviously loved it. The relationship that we see between Bo and Win is just so wholesome. They have the sweetest love and relationship because Bo is such a golden retriever. Watching them together just honestly healed my soul and made me so happy. Next question is my biggest disappointments of the year. As you could imagine, me being a harsh rater, there are quite a few disappointments. And I have to say, just generally as a category, I would say a lot of the new releases have been really disappointing to me. If we're talking about fantasy, both The Rebel Witch and Fearless were really disappointing to me. Rebel Witch is the continuation of the Crimson Moth duology and the final book that we're going to receive within the series. I felt like this book was just so repetitive, a lot of cat and mouse, really nothing was ever going on. Our characters were having a lot of the same discussions, and there was just generally a lack of character development. And I have to say almost the same exact thing for Fearless by Lauren Roberts. This is the end to the Powerless trilogy, and I am so sad that this ended on such a low. I loved Powerless. I gave it 5 stars. Is it repetitive and unoriginal? Absolutely, but it was just fun and I loved that banter. Unfortunately, Fearless was an absolute flop for me. I think I ended up giving it like a 2 stars. I think our author and our publisher just got a little bit too comfortable with the plot that we saw in Powerless and took the easy way out with repeating a lot of those same plot points. So it just felt like I was reading a repeat of book 1, but it was worsely done. So another brutal way to end out a series. This next book makes me even more sad to say, but I just finished reading Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, her most recent release, and I genuinely kind of really hated it. I gave it a 3 stars, but I think I'm just being generous because it's from Emily Henry. I don't actually think this book deserves a 3 stars. This book has been very controversial in the book world because generally she does write a lot of romance with a women's fiction lens. However, this is very much a fiction novel with a drop of romance, and I do have to say that I actually enjoyed the fiction. We kind of get a dual timeline as our FMC Alice is interviewing an old Hollywood starlet Violet Margaret, and we get a full rundown of Margaret and all of her family members just to give us a full context of the family drama that ensued. I do have to say I actually enjoyed Margaret's story. However, everything that we see between Alice and our MMC in developing that romance just completely and utterly did not hit for me. It felt like so poorly done insta-love. I don't know how this was written by Emily Henry, considering she does write such compelling romances. This whole romance didn't connect to me at all emotionally, and it honestly icked me out on multiple occasions. And then finally, to end it off, the most recent book that I just finished was also a disappointment, and that is Annabelle Monaghan's new release, It's a Love Story. I won't go into this one too much because I will be talking about this in my July wrap-up, but overall, I just didn't connect with our FMC whatsoever. She felt very emotionally stunted and really socially awkward. I don't know if the author was trying to do that in an endearing way, but for me, it just made me not connect to our FMC whatsoever. And since this book is solely through her point of view, it was a bit unbearable to get through. Seventh question is, a book you enjoyed with mixed reviews. As I was just hyping up Empire of Storms a little bit ago in the tandem read, maybe it won't be that surprising to say that I actually really did enjoy Tower of Dawn. And I do know that Tower of Dawn is generally the least favorite book in the Throne of Glass series. Now, was it my favorite book in the series? Absolutely not. But again, I think the tandem read just really added something to it for me. I loved seeing how, even though we were on different continents following completely different characters, seeing how those storylines were still converging and playing into each other was just so interesting to me. I ended up loving Cole so much more through the end of this book. And I just loved seeing the callback from one of the Assassin's Blade short stories, making such a direct impact into this book. But I know that's quite an unpopular opinion, considering if you do just read this book on its own and not in the tandem read, I do know that this book is a very slow read, which is why I would definitely go ahead and just generally recommend the tandem. Next question is my favorite new authors that I found this year. That can either be through a debut or just simply new to me. Both of these authors are new to me, and I have mentioned them already in this video. That would be Jessica Joyce, who wrote The X-Files, and then Julie Soto, who wrote Not Another Love Song. I just love both of their writing styles, and I will absolutely be purchasing whatever they put out next. Next question is newest fictional crush. This is hard to me because I feel like I really found a lot of my book boyfriends' fictional crushes last year, and some of those are really hard to top. However, some men that I loved to read about this year was first Beau from Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. I mentioned him earlier, but he is just the sweetest golden retriever man. In a lot of ways, he reminds me of Hunter. We very much have like a black cat golden retriever relationship dynamic. So whenever I get to read about characters that remind me of him, I just instantly love them a little bit more. From there, we have Rowan from Throne of Glass. I think if you read Throne of Glass, you're just obviously going to love Rowan. He is such a loyal and powerful partner, which I absolutely love. I feel like he is such a complement and an equal within his relationship, which is a hard thing to do considering who he is with. But I loved him. I love that he's a little bit different. You know, he's not the shadow daddy vibe with the dark hair. He has like white, gray hair and face tattoos, but honestly, it works for him. If you look up the fan art, I don't know how you couldn't love Rowan. And finally, I'm going to do a quick plug from Charlie from Book Lovers. Now, I mentioned this was a reread, but I would have to say that Charlie was never on my book boyfriend list before the reread, so I'm going to slip him in as well. Books that made me cry. Now, I'm really not a crier at all. I cry like 2 times a year. So this question is a little bit hard for me because I generally don't cry within books, but a book that got me super emotional, and I even have it on camera how emotional and distraught I really was Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. I had mentioned earlier that it made such a huge impact on me, but the ending to Empire of Storms wrecked me. I don't know the last time I was that upset at the end of the book. I just hated everything about that, but it was so impactful to the plot, and I understand why she did it. But the ending of Empire of Storms was so hard. So I didn't cry, but I felt emotionally unwell at the end of that book. Next question is books that made me happy. Now you're going to notice a theme with these. 1, you've heard almost all of these before, and 2, they're all contemporary romances. So a book that made me happy, maybe my favorite book of the year, The X-Files. I already can't wait to do a reread on this book. I know that I'm going to be insufferable the day that I do, but every single word in this book is just like perfect. And the yearning that you feel for these two to get back together, Top tier. I really was trying my best not to repeat books as much, but next book that made me happy is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. It's just so sweet, wholesome, and cute. If you are having a tough time, if you need just a literal warm hug, just pick up Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. It is so wholesome and sweet, and I promise it will make you happy along the way. And finally, for a book that I haven't mentioned just quite yet, is Ready or Not by Cara Bastone. Now, funnily enough, it has very similar tropes to Out on a Limb, so this isn't the most shocking pick. Ready or Not is another accidental pregnancy story. However, it is also a childhood friends to lovers story. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. Very slow burn. You were dying for these two to get together in the end. Again, our FMC is just such a golden retriever. He is so sweet and caring towards our FMC throughout her pregnancy. These two together just made me happy. Okay, next question is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. Now I am going into this a little bit weary considering a lot of my new releases I've gone into this year haven't fully worked out for me. That being said, a new release that I'm about to pick up is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I am so excited for this. If this isn't a 5 stars, I truly don't even know what I'm doing with reading books and trying to be a booktuber. Everything about this screams 5-star energy, so I am manifesting that through and through. To go along with that, I'm so excited for Julie Soto's new release. It literally just came out the other day, so I haven't gotten to it just quite yet, but that would be Rose and Chains, her introduction into the romantasy genre. And it's actually like a Draco and Hermione fanfic being redone. So I'm a newbie to the Draco and Hermione fanfic era, so I am curious to see how that goes. And then finally, I do love Miss Ashley Poston, so I'm really excited to get to her new release, Sounds Like Love. Because all of her romances do have a magical realism twist to it, I am excited to get to this probably more in the fall time because I feel like that's just the perfect time to pick up an Ashley Poston book. Kind of continuing on with the new release idea, what are my most anticipated releases for the second half of this year? First, I'm really excited to get the sequel in the Blonde Identity series by Ali Carter. And the new book that's coming out is The Blonde Who Came In From the Cold. I believe we're following the sister story who we are introduced to in book 1. These are just like very lighthearted spy novels with some romance to it. I grew up on Ali Carter spy novels, so I think I just have like a soft spot for these especially, but I am excited to see how the sequel goes. And then from there, finally, we are getting A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sangu Mandana. I read my first book by this author last year, which was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I think I gave that like a 4.25, but really it was just very cozy and wholesome. Okay, we are getting through these questions. We don't have too many left, but I do think I could stay on this one for a little bit. It says, what questions do you want to get to by the end of this year? Obviously, there are so many books that I want to get to by the end of this year. It would be a little bit silly to name them all off, but I think it's worth going back to the list that I made at the start of this year for the 25 books I wanted to get to in 2025. If I look at this list, out of the 25, I have read 12. So I'm not doing too bad. I wish I was maybe like 1 or 2 books ahead of schedule. Keep in mind, The Blonde Who Came In From the Cold, Sounds Like Love, A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. All of these are on this list, so I know all of those are going to get checked off. From there were a couple different series I wanted to start, but a lot of these are fantasies, so I really feel like the second half of this year I can pull through with a lot of these, considering I have been leaving a lot of my fantasies for later on. For instance, I have Threadneedle by Carrie Thomas, Legendborn by Tracy Dion, Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, Light Lark by Alex Astor, Shadow and Bone by Lee Bardugo, A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab, just to name a few. If you'd like to learn more about those books or why I picked them, I did do a 25 to read in 2025 TBR video. I can go ahead and link that above and below if you were interested in checking it out. Second to last question is, do you think you'll reach your reading goal? Absolutely yes, because I did set it to be manageable this year. Last year I did 100. I didn't want to feel any pressure this year, especially considering the pressure I already felt with the wedding and honeymoon. So this year I had set it to 75 books. Considering I'm already at 45, I think we can definitely get that done by the end of the year. I obviously hope to read more. Maybe in my head, maybe my mental goal is around 90. However, I'm gonna actively try to not put any pressure on that because I am a perfectionist and reading's supposed to be fun. So I'm just gonna try and make this fun this year and not push myself to read if I don't feel like reading. And that leaves us off on our last question of the mid-year freakout tag, and that is, what are some 5-star predictions you have for the rest of this year? Obviously, a lot of the books that I've mentioned today that I'm wanting to get to, I do anticipate them being rated highly. So I hope that a lot of those on my 2025 TBR and new releases will end up being a 5-star read. Some specific 5-star predictions that I did pull out was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I already mentioned that. I truly don't know how this could be anything other than a 5-star. I also did just pick up in my most recent book haul If We Were Villains by ML Rio. I feel like even though this is dark academia and that's not a genre that I read very often, everyone that I've heard read this says that it's amazing. This just seems to be a crowd pleaser. It sounds so interesting from what I've heard that I am really excited to give that one a go, but I do think I'll probably save it for like October, November timeframe. And then from there, I do plan on continuing on with the Ember Quartet. I did read An Ember in the Ashes earlier this year, and then I completely abandoned it to try and finish Throne of Glass series. So now it is my opportunity to go ahead, finish out that series. I already have book 2 set to go on my July TBR, and I'm hoping to get to that very, very soon. But I'm hoping that I have many more 5-star reads in my future. And that is the end of today's video. We have completed all the questions in the mid-year freakout tag. I will make sure to list all the questions that I answered down below if you want to do this yourself. And if you have made it to this far in the video, I do have a quick ask for you. At the time of me filming this, we are getting very close to 1,000 subscribers. So I think it would be kind of fun to do a Q&A for hitting 1,000 subscribers, just so you guys can get to know a little bit more about me, maybe a little bit more about Hunter, my husband. So if you've made it this far and you have any questions, make sure to leave them down below. I might have this ask in the next few videos to try and build up a couple questions. But yeah, I think it would be fun just for you guys to get to know a little bit more about me. But for now, this is where I will love you and leave you. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe before you leave so that you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye guys.